Hey guys, got another Frunksession video today, and this time it is Earl, or at 28 Delays Later on Twitter, and Ashley, who's an ER nurse. Both of them are here, and we're talking about the current pandemic, about what's called PPE, personal protective equipment, masks, stuff like that, and just the current thoughts about what's happening right now. And I've got my therapy dog here. This is Earl. Earl's great therapy because, you know, when things get frustrating and you need to relieve stress, you got Earl just to take all your stress out on. Just be mean to him, and then you feel calm again. That's what Earl's for. Just remember that. All right, here we go.
All right, just a reminder that any opinions shared today are just my own. They don't reflect my work or anybody else, just me.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another Frunksession with Tesla Social. This time we've got a special guest. This is Ashley. She's an ER nurse, and we have Earl. Earl, you'll see up here somewhere.
Hi, Wade and Ashley.
Hello, Earl.
So first, can you tell us a little bit, Ashley, what is it you do? And
Yeah, I'm an ER nurse here in Tucson, and recently we've started dealing with the influx of COVID patients in our department, and it's a lot.
so as far as being in an ER as a nurse and what you've experienced before versus what you're seeing now, what's different, what's changed?
Actually, some of what people are insinuating online, but with like kind of a bad connotation, is that volume in the ER, at least in my department, and all I'm talking about is my department because I can't speak for anything beyond that, but in my department, the volume of patients is actually down. And the reason that is because a lot of people use the emergency department for subacute problems because of the way the system's structured. They can't get the primary care doctor, or whatever the case may be. They ER. So because of the stay-at-home orders and the social distancing and probably just fear, people aren't coming into the ER for subacute problems. So a lot of our volume has dropped. That said, our acuity, in my experience and opinion, has not. So everybody that does come to the ER, by and large, is very sick. It's, you know, very sick heart, very sick strokes, very sick overdoses, very sick psych patients, all of that. So they still need attention, come to the ER, you know, be seen. That's what we're here for still and always, right? And then on top of that, we add now, before we didn't have to worry about COVID, we always had infectious diseases and communicable diseases and things like that to worry about, especially being as close as we are to an international border. But now that we have COVID, we have to treat everyone as though they're suspicious or suspected positive, right? And some are higher suspicion of index for that contamination than others. So we're, at least I'm kind of on edge, and everybody, we have to like don all of this protective equipment for any patients that meet X, Y, and Z criteria, right? Which takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time, especially when we're not given the tools we need to do it right. So we're trying to take off this gown without contaminating ourselves.
Exactly.
Right? In order to hang it up and use it again, which is so counterintuitive to our professional brains and the way that we've been taught to do things. So that alone to me is exhausting, coupled with the fact that we're taking care of a really sick patient that, you know, is short of breath, can't breathe, has low oxygen levels in their blood, and we're scared for them. And we're trying to hurry, and we're trying to do our best, and we're also trying not to infect ourselves, so then we turn around, go to the next room, and infect someone else.
So
it's a lot.
in PPE, personal protective equipment, is designed for single use. Right. So we have a procedure. We put the gown on, the mask, and everything, the gloves, and we take it off. There's a way of breaking it off, pulling it, and then pulling everything off and disposing it in the red biohazard bag as you leave. Right. And that's how we're trained to use PPE. Now, having to reuse everything, it's like we have to think and be careful, because the PPE could be contaminated that we're wearing.
Yes.
How do we take it off and to reuse it as well?
It's very counterintuitive in that sense.
It's
So
a different world right now.
it's a totally different world. And I'm seeing things from people I think that don't quite understand or might have a disconnect with, essential workers, especially healthcare workers. This is what you signed up for. This is your job. Go take care of people. You won't get an argument from me out of that. This is what I signed up for. ER nurses, they know they might encounter a pandemic or an infectious disease or something in their life. They know a school bus might flip in front of their hospital and they're going to have to take care of patients and be overwhelmed and it'll be tragic. We understand all of that. We know that's what we signed up for. What we did not sign up for is to not be adequately protected while we do that.
Right.
That's the difference.
And that's where the mask project comes in. I've been trying to make these masks.
Amazing, by the way.
There's some other people who are making face shields, donating them. And yeah, it's a shame we're not prepared with the right PPE for everybody. But yeah, I'll put a link up here somewhere to show about the mask project. It'll also be in the description. Find out about the mask project. Also what Rosh and St. Wedge and Living Tesla are doing for their face shields. I'll put links down there. But yeah, so everything's changed right now in the ER, and sounds like numbers are down because you only have the more serious cases. Because I hear stories like there's not many people in the hospital, not many people in the ER. They're lower numbers, but that's because not many people are going for elective stuff right now.
Or subacute. Yeah, elective's not really a word that we use in the ER as often.
Yeah.
But yeah, elective for like surgical.
Elective surgeries,
right.
As well as subacute.
But in the ER, people aren't coming in for their stubbed toe. They're not coming in for the abdominal pain they've had for 3 months, all that sort of thing. But just because volume is down doesn't mean acuity is down.
Exactly.
And we still have to work just as hard or harder
patients.
To take care of those high acute patients.
Okay. All right. And how about you, Earl? You are, I understand, a neuropsychologist.
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
So in my real life, back in the States, I mostly deal with cognitive assessments. So it'd be things like dementia, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injuries, anything cognitive like that, or just testing for learning disorders or things. I am in the military, so we also screen people. You know, if you have like an active duty pilot or something that hits their head, you want to make sure that they're okay before you put them back in a jet. So that's kind of the role of a neuropsychologist. But we do work in a hospital, and we're in part of the hospital setting. I'm currently overseas though, and I work in a small medical clinic, and I'm not really doing that. I'm just doing more general psych. But like everywhere else in America, we have to have a plan for COVID-19 and how we're going to handle that. And that does involve kind of all hands on deck. You need to help out, but also the psychological side of the interventions is really important about how can you keep people far enough apart and wear masks and do all the things that you need to do in a setting where you still need to get your job done. So psychology becomes an important piece of that as well. Of course, my job has changed, probably less so than back in the States, where I'd probably be trying to do more things over the telephone. If I was doing therapy, I don't know how much assessment I would be doing over the phone. They'd probably have to wait, kind of like you're talking about with acuity. There's probably people with TBIs that just aren't going to be seen for their cognitive assessment until it get opened up again. But over here, I'm still seeing people face to face, and you do everything you're supposed to do, stay far enough apart, wear masks and everything. But yeah, it's really changed life over here. And then the other piece that I see is how people are feeling about all those changes, but also just worries about back home. So it's a little bit different than usual. You usually miss home and usually worry about people. There's not always a pandemic going on, which kind of adds some different layers of financial worries, of just people getting sick or friends of family getting sick, things like that. So it definitely adds a little bit to what I'm doing overseas right now that wouldn't typically be there. But yeah, so that's kind of. Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is having an impact psychologically on people right now?
So
and
I think
the reality that we're seeing, it's a whole different world right now.
Yes, and there's a lot of research and literature on things like when you don't do the stuff that's healthy for you. And that usually includes social activities, getting outside, exercising, being in groups of people. People aren't really designed to be alone all the time. There's a reason that some countries use that as a form of torture, right? Isolation. So we're doing that to ourselves on purpose. Now, some people are with their families, but some people are alone all the time too. So those type of psychological factors. But in the beginning, there's also a lot of novelty to it. So there's a lot of change. There's a lot of stories. A lot of things are different. People are worried. The interventions are new. Staying far apart is new. It's not until later that the psychological drag starts, where it's just not cute anymore. I'm actually running out of money. I don't want to be at home anymore. And then that's when people start spinning to not do this anymore, or to find a way out of that. And I think that's really I think that's a very normal human emotion to have. I think, unfortunately, in this day and age of social media, that you could pick kind of any topic you want and any side of that topic you want and hit search, and you will find lots of quote resources that support your point of view that you can then post and hit people on the head with. But it doesn't specifically make it true all the time. Sometimes there might be a piece of truth to it, but that's not really how we design community interventions that are successful. It's just to find a couple things that we like. And I think that plays a role. I think psychology plays a role in that, because it's natural to start to worry about that. On top of the real world stuff, right? I mean, people really are running out of money, and people really are struggling. And, they start to feel pretty desperate about that. So that's certainly not surprising that would occur.
Yeah, so that brings us to this whole thing about opening everything up. And like you were saying, you can find any study or research to support your point of view, unfortunately, whether it's right or wrong. And so what I'm seeing is, it's getting better. I think it's getting better overall because stay at home. And it's working. Some people are looking around and like, oh, well, nothing's really happening. Well, it's because we're staying at home. And it seemed an article, I didn't get a chance to read it in depth, but there were several countries who are doing well, and they're starting to open things back up a little bit, or they have a plan in place. I'm wondering what your thoughts were on that, about opening up, and if we do, what would that look like?
Yeah, so I don't know, some reason this had become an unpopular view, but to me, I would go with the people who study this. As somebody who's kind of gone pretty far in my field, if there was a TBI, I think it'd be appropriate to ask me about that.
Right.
And I think if there's a pandemic, you probably ask the people who have spent way too much time on this, who understand viruses, who understand how it spreads, and they're going to give you their best kind of educated view on what's going on. Every country's not going to match up, and the United States is kind of made up of many countries too. We have areas that are very densely populated. We have areas like Montana that have, 50 people per square mile. I mean, it's totally different. So the interventions are going to be a little bit different as well. But I think the important part is just, we have a lot of knowledge, and we've seen, we're lucky, we're not first to get this pandemic. And we've seen people succeed. We've seen countries succeed. We've seen countries fail. We also have a history of knowing how viruses work and how psychology works, and that we're probably prone to end the intervention too soon, and then you're going to get the second wave. So that it's really important to try to avoid that. A lot of the places that seem successful in my mind are ones that have taken this really seriously, even if they haven't had quote lockdowns, which really in America we haven't really had lockdowns either. My wife can leave the house, she can go to the store, there's nobody with a gun on our street,
Right.
But people are, sheltering in place, and that's okay. But the countries that are successful, you see them with, they have changed where you can stand, how close you are to people, if they're wearing masks, it's not just the same. That's what makes me a little nervous, because you see some things opening up. Like I saw a story today, like the beach is open and everybody's just at the beach. There's no everybody's close to each other, and that's, to me, it makes me a little bit nervous about what that could potentially lead to. if you want to go down the route of, you know, the herd mentality and community and just kind of spread this around, well, we kind of missed the boat on that because we started with distancing in the beginning. So you can't really choose two interventions that we're going to start with isolation and then halfway through we're going to turn into like Sweden or something. That there's no plan. Like there has to be some sort of a thought out plan, more testing or whatever. I don't know what you need to have some sort of a rationally thought out beginning to end kind of plan. I think we've already chosen to shut down a lot of things. And that's where we are right now, like it or lump it. And it probably makes sense to do as much as we can now, get through this so that we don't have worse outcomes later. I think that's the kindest and most sensible thing to do. In the meantime, you're going to have to support people. And, you know, clearly that's going to be first and foremost as far as, you know, healthcare and being able to pay your bills and stuff. So that's a whole separate issue. But the virus doesn't care about politics, and the virus doesn't care about the virus is just trying to spread. And if we have groups of people, it has not given up. it's just gonna come back. So I just think we need to be really careful with that. And just last thing about that, I think Twitter's hard, and I think people very quickly put you in a bucket of where you stand on something. So it gets very quickly polarizing on any issue. So the people who are saying, well, let's not dramatically just end the lockdown tomorrow, get put in a box that they want to be in lockdown forever. And then there's the people who appear that they want to just end it tomorrow and we all walk outside and who cares about plans, you know? I think very few people are really on those polls, you know? What's that?
Oh, there's a growing number of people like that. They want to end it and walk out just tomorrow and be done with it.
Yeah.
And go back.
Yeah.
And we can't, not that quick. And I'll put a link in the description of this too. There is a website which is tracking every healthcare worker that's dying every day. Every day.
Oh wow.
Across the board, there's nurses, doctors, caregivers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, every aspect of healthcare.
Environmental services.
Yeah, even the housekeepers in the hospital, environmental services,
Yeah.
who are dying. And people aren't seeing that from this side, this perspective of where we see in the stories I'm hearing, where another agency had to quarantine 80% of their staff because of exposure to COVID-19.
Yeah. You know, and then I talked about this before. I think people know when I started Frunk Puppy, my wife had a pretty serious health scare, an aneurysm that had burst, and she's young and pretty healthy, but she's kind of high risk. She can't really play around and get coronavirus just for fun. She probably shouldn't. And I'm also overseas, right? And if there's a second wave of the pandemic, guess who's not coming home? I'm already been delayed over a month.
Right.
28 days because of the virus, and more will happen if, you know, so I have a personal stake in that too. And then my mom is in a nursing home, and two caregivers have tested positive for coronavirus, and it's in a very rural area. So I shared this story with a couple people. My dad died last year of cancer, and he needed a certain procedure. So he lives in that area. There's only one place that does it. So he would have to hop in a van and drive 45 minutes. He never got the procedure. He died because he was in too much pain by the time he got there, got in the van and drove. But it's because there's so few resources.
Right.
If it hits areas like that, and it's there now, first of all, I worry that my mom won't make it because, you know, she's elderly and in this population. And imagine how quickly a healthcare system like that gets overrun with people. It was overrun when there was no pandemic, right? So it's just not good. People will just die. And I think it's really important to do this carefully because everybody has stories like that, and everybody has people and loved ones that are close to them. And I think you're right. I just don't think we see that enough. We see the numbers and we see the charts. and we see that hopefully we're making some progress. But I think we really need to continue to really consider the human aspect and what's at stake if we really get this wrong. And that's why we need to lean on the people who have been preparing for this. There's nerds who've been talking about pandemics for years, just like I talk about Tesla, right? And they're ready for this and they have suggestions. So to just push them aside all of a sudden because we just feel like, well, it's nothing bad really happened. That's because they're doing their job. A good successful virus intervention should look like that. If it was really bad, we'd be mad at them too, right?
And there's a great podcast that has all these experts. There's a virologist, a disasterologist, all these people come together talking about this. And they're the professionals. They're the ones we need to be listening to.
Yeah.
Yes.
The news stations and media folks. And somebody put up one person saying, and you listen to it, you just keep saying, it's my opinion, I think this is what's going on, blah, blah, about how these numbers are being skewed and all this. It's like one person with this opinion, and it went viral. And I think even Elon Musk commented on that one. The increase in COVID-19 cases is being skewed because maybe they really didn't have it. I don't know, but we need to look at the professionals and not look at opinions. And I'll put
it's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. You know, I think about the community I'm in, and there's just so many wonderful dorks that are so into rockets and electric cars and nerdy stuff and science. And then, you know, people get antsy about that the lockdown's not the right way to go. And we just throw science right out the window for like a YouTube video. And it's shocking to me. It's been a little surprising even to have the arguments on Twitter that I've had just by saying things like, maybe we should just go with the experts on this. Seems like a pretty benign thing to say to people who are science-minded.
And it's trying not. To say reasonable, rational.
Yeah.
So,
and I have to bite my tongue a lot. Like today, I got slammed for not that I have no place talking about mental health issues. I am a board-certified psychologist, and I've also gotten skewered in the last 2 days about not understanding people's freedoms, and I'm currently deployed with the military. So it's just, what do you want? Who is allowed to talk about this? Not the virus people, not people who are like defending the Constitution, not people who understand mental health, not nurses, not doctors, just the people who are saying things that fit the story of, yeah, you know what, let's all head outside tomorrow and we're going to be great. With no planning, no intervention. I just, it's stunning to me. And honestly, it depresses me. We will get through this pandemic, but it just makes me wonder, how are we going to tackle climate change? Because you can see the numbers and you can see people dying if you want, but climate change is what it's like a couple degrees warmer. I mean, this is so nebulous. I can't, anyway, I know that's another topic, but that's kind of where I go with this. That and that is one thing I think there's more agreement in the Tesla community with, is that, yeah, the pandemic's a problem, but we still need to focus in on climate change. But if I look at how this is being handled, it does not bolster a lot of confidence. I hope to be wrong.
Ashley, are you seeing any like more increase in psych issues or anything?
Oh gosh, I would say because I'm such a small sample size, right?
Yeah.
Just my little department, it's kind of hard to tell. I think if you looked at it over like all of Pima County or all of Arizona, you probably would, I would think.
Right.
But just my little department, it's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes sense. And what I'm seeing online of people lashing out, I mean, they're frustrated. People are frustrated. They don't have money. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. They're out of work. Yeah. They're not able to do, the whole sense of normal reality has changed. They're able to do things that they would normally do. And it's taken a toll mentally on a lot of people, just in my own unprofessional opinion from what I see. Yeah. And a couple things I've experienced recently with a psychotic episode and some breakdowns.
I think a better person or better group to ask would be someone more like Earl, who's are they seeing an increase in appointments and people wanting therapy and things like that. I think by the time they are in the ER, normally they're suicidal or having like self-harm thoughts and stuff like that. So it's hard to so it's hard to determine whether or not those people were already in that position and the virus is making it worse, quarantine's making it worse. I don't know, but
I do think that's, at least for the areas where it's available, that's where telehealth has been really useful because we can do a lot over, we cannot help the psychotic suicidal patient the way the ER is going to be able to, but for most people just starting to deal with symptoms of anxiety and depression, luckily we can do a lot over the phone. And that's one useful thing in my field. But again, it kind of comes down to where it's available, what providers are available. But I know back in my home state in Ohio, they are doing a lot of telehealth things at the hospitals, and I think that is pretty useful. And hopefully those things are covered. Because I deal with military, I don't think much about insurance, but I don't know outside of the hospital how available things are. Ashley, are you re-wearing PPE because you don't have enough, and that's like the that's just so sad to me. I know that's happening, but I haven't really talked to people in person.
That's real.
Doing that.
Did you see the photo of her?
Mind-boggling. I'll have to look. Is it on your site?
With my Splash Mountain rain poncho?
Yeah, she got rain ponchos, ski goggles, and all kinds of stuff in the ER working like that.
Fabric mask.
I'll put a photo here in the video.
I underneath that fabric mask.
Okay. So that's why these masks, I'll show you what they look like real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, this was before I had the mask you gave me.
So this is the original design of the mask, which somebody came up with this, and the filter pops here.
Yeah.
And it's a smaller filter area, so you can imagine wearing this for a 12-hour shift, breathing in that with an N95 or better material. It's very hard to breathe.
It's thick.
So this one has a larger area.
Yeah.
And so this is the latest design that we're working on. And that comes
cool.
Put that right.
Yep.
So this is much easier to breathe through on a long shift of 12 hours or more.
And the reason these are so much better, at least since I've been here, is because you have that one? Thank you. Because you can wipe all of this area down. So before we're just using our same like cloth version, like an N95 with just all N95 material. We're supposed to use that all day, take it off and put it back on, right? While keeping it away from our own face. So the outside of the mask is contaminated because it's all of the contaminated particles are hitting the front of the mask and hopefully stopping the virus from coming through to you on this side, right?
Yeah.
But there are people who don't know how to use personal protective properly, and I see them touching the front of their mask, right?
Yeah.
Touching here and then touching here. Well, now the entire time you wore that mask was useless because you just wiped everything it caught onto your face, right?
Yeah.
So we have to take these off without and this happens a lot where you pull the mask and you flip it and it flips and smacks you in the forehead and then it's just saying, haha, never mind. So these are nice because you can take a wipe or alcohol or even anything like that and just clean it here first. And then you have a much less chance, you have a clean surface that you can grab and you flip and smack yourself or whatever. It's not as bad. That, and it uses less N95 material, which is hard to come by. And you can switch the material out throughout the shift and still use less material that's harder than you would have otherwise. So that's why these are great. Plus, I think they're more comfortable than your standard N95. I'm one of those nurses that have the red pressure sores. Basically, I get it all here and all here, and then my face breaks out. It's pretty awful. And then you don't drink enough water because you're wearing a mask all day, and you don't. Because you're wearing a mask all day, and the more times you touch it, the more chance you have of contaminating yourself. So you just I'm not going to eat or drink anything all day because I'm busy and because I don't want to contaminate myself. Because I should have thrown away 6 hours ago.
Well, you guys must have an incredibly high salary for taking these risks every day.
Yeah, I'm hanging out with a guy who has a Tesla. I mean,
But typically, this disposable N95 mask, what you would do.
Right.
You put this on, you throw it away. Typical cost in bulk for hospitals, 58 cents a piece. Now, when you can find these, they're running around $6 a lot of times. I've seen them as low as $4.50 and up as high as $7 a piece for disposable.
One mask?
For one mask. They're supposed to be 58 cents each. Now there's mask brokers. And mask brokers are the middleman making a fortune right now off selling these.
From somebody's life.
Trying to wear these over and over and putting a cloth mask over it.
Yeah,
like
that's what I was doing before, because then the cloth mask hopefully keeps this one nicer, because you got to wear it all day.
Right. Some would get through that material, but not as much.
Not as much. Keeps it nicer.
So that's what they've been doing is this, and now we're moving to these.
I just feel like our rage is focused on the virus experts rather than this
The
stuff.
people that screwed us out of this.
Right, frontline workers having to reuse stuff, people price gouging masks, people not having the right. I mean, that's what everybody should be on board with, because that'll get us out of this mess faster if we're thinking that way and testing and all those things. That's where our dollars should be. And instead we're paying for what, overpriced masks maybe, trying to rewear things, and then your provider gets sick.
And we weren't prepared. And we could have been. You know, there was that study, they looked at this back, was it October? They did a scenario of a pandemic and what would happen. And it's interesting, there's a whole report on this. They said, oh, we wouldn't be prepared for a pandemic, and they had things put in place, nothing ever happened. Uh-oh, my camera just stopped, hold on a second. I have a feeling that my main camera probably was not going for some reason. I hope it was. I've got this record. We may have to deal with
Yeah,
this.
whatever works.
What
Let's start over. Hi, I'm Earl.
Oh my God.
So where were we? A lot of the problems, I think, is because we're not prepared, and we don't have resources to help, like a social safety net for a situation like this, like some countries do. And there's some anger.
Yeah, and that's often the piece missing from some of these cross-country comparisons for people, when it's like, let's just open it up. They kind of think that we have the same healthcare system, the same healthcare access, the same plans in place to make sure everybody does this safely. It's just that it's apples to oranges. I mean, and you can see this real time, like I brought up before. So what happens when you tell people they can go outside? Well, they all go to the beach and stand together. Like that's not what other countries have been doing when they're ending their lockdowns. They're you know, you can see people very far apart. They're wearing masks. They're doing everything they're supposed to do. And then, yeah, that seems to be a reasonable plan forward in most places, but you got to do it. So I don't know why we're skipping those steps and just think that we just wait. We've waited long enough, and now we're antsy and people have lost enough money. So we head back. I think you have to think of other solutions to that because you're going to get punched in the face again later. It's just how it works. If you listen or read, you know, any of the experts, this is what happens when you stop the isolation too soon and you don't have a vaccine yet. You have to do certain things to slow this down so you don't overwhelm the healthcare system. And I don't know why we think we can suddenly avoid that, but anyway, I mean, that's fine. I mostly got dragged into this issue. Just I have been tweeting about Elon's response to this for a little while. I said quite a while ago, just that he's kind of Dunning-Krugered this coronavirus thing as a joke, because I just felt like it's what he's doing, like reading a thing and then getting all worked up about it. But that's not how it really works. But he's escalated that to just all caps tweets. And it loses, because he's still rational about it. He still tweets things that are very rational about, you know, safely moving forward and doing this the smart way. But that gets lost because a couple tweets before, it's all caps and like freedom and maybe like a call to arms, right? And then, but those two things don't match, because the solution to tyranny is to like a social rebellion. and safely ending a lockdown is kind of what we're trying to do to get people back to work. And I people will share both of those tweets with you if you argue with them, about ending it. And it's like, oh no, he thinks this. Well, yeah, he thinks two things. He thinks multiple things. He just wants to open his factory. I agree with him. I also like Teslas, and I do want them to open. I don't want people to suffer, which is why I want to do this right. And that's how most people are. It's pretty popular opinion that we need to do this right. And you can see that even in areas that do start to lift things, a lot of people still stay home and do a lot of that stuff because they know better.
I think some places, I don't know what your work's like, but when you go in, they take your temperature and make sure your temperature's okay, and they do social distancing, and they're able to open up in a safe way. And I've heard places are doing that. You guys do that when you go and do work?
Yeah, so all the employees, they get the screening, like they get their temperature taken. Have you had any coffee, very short of breath, et cetera? No. Have you been in contact with anybody positive? Well, yes, I have, but but yeah, they're screening everybody as best they can, but we never really close.
It just seems basic. You have a pandemic and you need to have a plan and you need to put it in place. You would do that with anything. I can't think of many things where you would just throw your hands up, be frustrated, and then just do nothing. Just go back to normal. I mean, it's 2020. I mean, there's so much. We know so much more than we did like during the Spanish flu. And they ended up doing the same thing. Like, in some cities, they ended it too soon, and then they had a huge spike. And viruses are still viruses. We know a lot more. We understand them to such a genetic level. Like, we understand so much about them. And what I'm watching is we're going to, hopefully I'm wrong, but repeat. We're going to do worse than the people in 1918 who didn't have the internet or cars or many things that we have, and they didn't have access, bubbled through it better.
Yes, there's some evidence showing that there's places that opened up too soon back in 1980.
Right. Yeah, I think it was Philly had a parade or something. This is going off the top of my head, but one of the cities had a celebration that ended or something, and then they got pounded with cases.
Right, and came back again.
Like, of course. But and why would that not happen? Of course it's going to happen.
Exactly.
So we got to be smart. It's unprecedented times. We have nothing to compare it to, and in our lifetimes at least, But I feel for people. And that's the other side of it you get. It's just, how are you so cold? And the consequences of being closed and suicide. That's what I like when people start to school me on things like suicide and depression. Like, the emotional cost of this, and of course, but that's what I tried to write is that, well, the anger for that is in a different place. It's not with the scientists. It's not with the plans. It's not with slowly opening. It's the safety nets. It's everybody being able to have access to care and enough money to get through this so that they're not freaking out. So you need to put your frustrations towards the right areas to make that change. And the answer isn't just to go walk outside. And even if we did nothing, there was going to be economic impact. I think about people like my wife back home with the kids. They're not taking a trip during a pandemic. They were going to take a lot of trips while I was gone, like as milestones. They're going to do that. They're not, and a lot of people are like, let's take that cruise. There's just things that are not going to happen. It doesn't matter if you open it up, and especially if you don't open it well, and then it comes back. You're just prolonging this. You're just making it worse. You're taking some of the antibiotic and being like, oh, I'm not sick anymore, and you stop taking it, and then it comes back.
It's back, and stronger.
And gets worse.
Right. And it's not, I would love to be wrong, if, you know what, great. We all go outside, we all somehow magically get herd immunity, and we're okay with how many people die during that. And the economy roars right back. And I just think that's a little pie in the sky. I saw somebody writing that today about how if you think that's going to happen, then you don't understand psychology. And I do think that's so important, the psychology of living through a pandemic and how you respond to that. It's not going to change. It's not going to change tomorrow. You're not going to do the same things. So we need to be smart about it.
So in your guess, what do you think might be long-term changes that we'll see? Like in what people's behaviors and habits because of this?
Yeah, that's great. And Ashley, maybe you have some thoughts on this too. I think I think places that absolutely don't need you to really come into work will be able to do things a little more distant so that we don't have piles of people together that don't really need to be together. We'll probably have a little more social distancing in normal places like restaurants and things like that. Hopefully the socially appropriate things like washing your hands.
Hey,
That's what I was gonna say.
Pick up in
Maybe
popularity.
fewer people will touch their faces.
Yes, fewer.
That's all I can hope
touching.
for. A girl can dream, right?
Yeah, but like, hugs, shaking hands with people, all that stuff that, that's all going to be a little bit different, I think, when you're meeting people.
Right. Even the washing hands thing, healthcare workers have not been very good at that traditionally. They've done, I worked at one hospital, they were set up a camera and they were just wanting to see how many their hands after they left the patient's room.
Yeah.
Something like it was more than 60% did not wash their hands.
Yeah.
And they went straight to the next patient. And that's a lot of hospital-based infections because people not. And that's across society. People haven't hands, but also in the hospital. So hopefully we'll see more of this becoming habit now and less infections in the hospital because of that.
I was reading a study a while ago about they took the neckties from doctors and tested them, and they were disgusting. I mean,
Neckties,
every
I don't know why they're still allowed to have ties.
They're like leaning over patients, right, talking to them, and they have like this big germ stick that they just wander around with all day.
No, to go back to what you were talking about, I actually was thinking just last night, I had a shift yesterday and I was, taking off all of my reusable PPE and wiping it down with alcohol. And I was like, I actually feel super, like, my face feels protected. If you see, if you show them that picture, you'll see I've got a hat on really low, so like right here.
Yeah.
I've got my big goggles on, and then I've got my mask. Now, if all of that stuff was clean and not contaminated and had not been reused, I felt super protected. Like, I was like, maybe after all of this is over, I should wear this stuff for all sick or potentially infectious patients. Like, maybe I am a good habit for myself. I don't know, or like when you're moving, it's simple things like when you're moving sheets around. Anytime there's air moving and the air is contaminated, there is the risk of transmission. So it's not like people are saying the 3-foot rule or the 6-foot rule even, right? But if air is stagnant and still, if I'm doing this, I'm just throwing potential air and virus at him, right? So that's still, 6 foot is not a magic catch-all, cure-all, right? So if I'm adjusting the sheets in a patient's room, there's a reason you should never see a nurse doing this thing, because they're whatever germs are on that patient all around the room, right? So I was just thinking about it and I was like, now I'm not getting all of this, moving air into my mucous membranes. This is kind of nice, actually.
Yeah.
Silver lining, I guess.
Right.
Wait, I think it would be great when she said she's throwing viruses at you, if you could edit in 78498 going over there towards you.
You told me you would.
Actually, I thought I'd give her this nice Frunk Puppy cup here. See, it's really cool. So,
that is not an original.
So this is an original Frunk Puppy mug. I'm going to give it to Ashley for being on here.
Thank you. This is amazing. Thank you very much. I might
So-
look into this referral code right here. It looks pretty.
Oh no. Oh, that's terrible.
But you know, I do keep a therapy dog with me as well. I don't know if I've told you I got a therapy dog.
No, I did not know
Yeah,
that. Wait.
so this is Earl. Earl's my therapy dog. He's and such a great stress relief because when I get mad, all I have to do is do this.
Oh,
Ah!
does that happen a lot during the day?
That's Earl,
Check
my
Twitter.
therapy dog.
I might have to start giving them out to the public.
So yeah,
Have you seen Ashley? Have you seen the socks that Wade sent me over here?
No, but I feel like I'm in the middle of a very deeply embedded inside joke right now.
Well, no, I'm gonna show you to that.
Show me.
So
Bring
Bring me in.
I got a package because you know, Wade and a couple other folks have sent some things, and I opened one of them, and this is what I got.
Oh
That's
my
my face.
god. Oh my goodness.
Wade with Santa hat,
Hey.
and
It's
Those are amazing.
it's Christmas every day
I mean,
for you.
what was it? February?
Yeah.
I wear them all the time though. They're pretty great. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a roommate here, and I've just never mentioned them. I just wear them, and then like they're normal socks. So I'd love to know what he thinks sometimes about why I have some guy's face on my socks.
So you also got a poster with the protection, the saint who's protecting you. So
Oh yeah, I don't have that over. I'm on the other side of the base, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome too. I can I'll have to. I don't know if I posted that.
you never did. I
Oh man, I got to do that. It's incredible. It's incredible.
You guys are too
So
much.
yeah, it's well, there's actually a patron saint because it's saint for everything, right? For psychologists, neuropsychologists, as well,
Yeah.
mentally ill, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So there's actually a patron saint, and then I just gave him this image that was painted in the 1600s of this patron saint, which also includes this patron saint of Tesla to help protect him, who's in there with his Tesla in the painting.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so
gosh.
yeah, actual painting. Yeah.
Sounds cool.
Yeah. That's great.
Anyway, any last remarks about what's going on about Elon's rant yesterday, or?
Well, you know, I think the great thing about Elon too is that he is a genius. He is amazing. He is. I mean, you have so many cool things coming up. They're going to launch astronauts again. You have full self-driving tech that just keeps rolling out even while I'm over here. I am super excited about the Cybertruck. I talk about it all the time. The only person more excited about it is Mark Benson, but it's hard to match that guy. Yeah, so Elon will bounce back and be just fine. He seems to go through spurts like this where you have some head scratchers and stuff that he tweets, but you know, there's a reason why I'm following the stock and have the car, you know, I'm looking at getting another one. You can, and I would say overall, complaining about the response, most of the people on Twitter are pretty supportive of reasonable interventions for COVID-19. And even if they disagree, are really cordial about it. There's a couple one-off folks that once in a while you're wondering what they're doing, but it's not the norm.
Yeah, emotions are pretty high with some people right now.
Yeah, as expected. And if you read anything about the pandemic as it was heating up, this is exactly what they said would happen, that we would get to a point where there aren't enough cases, everybody thinks it was overblown, and then they start to riot because they want to leave their homes. And that is when you can't do that, because then you have repeats. So that's why psychology is so important, and why I've tried to bring that piece up, because the reason you want to leave your house, for some people, it's not even a money thing. They're just sick of it and they just want to leave. And it's just all psychology. And you were expecting like Pandemic from the movies, where there's bodies in the streets, you know, and that's just not what it looks like, especially if you're on the right track. You're not going to see a lot of that stuff. So you finish the antibiotic and it sucks. and try to put our anger in the right places. But, you know, we'll move through this. My hope is that there's some sort of vaccine or something that will change our psychology a bit. If people,
Exactly.
you know, that'll get us back to normal. Unfortunately, I don't know how soon that is, and it depends on what you read. We may be dealing with this for longer than we think.
Right.
And that would definitely have a pretty big impact on everybody. But the silver lining to this absolutely has just been the beautiful shots of cities without pollution. And it gives me so much hope for an EV future and clean energy, and holy crap, we can live like that. And it's possible. And this pandemic in the long term, despite Elon's tweets right now, I think really sets up Tesla to go into another gear. I mean, I think they were already poised to dominate the EV sector, but there's just not going to be much competition trickling out from automakers that are hurting already, and then now their EVs are going to get bumped back.
Right.
And this guy is he's just throwing up gigafactories and I guess terafactories real fast. That's the only thing Legacy had on him, was we can make a lot of cars.
Right.
And while they're asleep at the wheel, he builds an enormous factory in China and gets the Model 3 rolling out of there at almost 4,000 a week in a blink of an eye in Q1.
Right.
Throw the Model Y lines together and it's profitable in Q1. This is going to happen in Berlin. This is going to happen in China. And I mean, who knows how fast he can get that Cybertruck up and running too. Who's going to catch up to him? He's got the battery tech. Who knows what battery day is going to bring? So, you know, I will continue to be a fan, and I think he's wonderful. But I also think it's fair that sometimes he's human. He says stupid things. I think it's okay to say that because he agrees. If you follow him, he will say those things. He will say he gets depressed. He will say he doesn't sleep enough. He will say that
He takes Ambien and drinks whiskey.
Right. He tells us these things. He says he's not infallible and he's not here to save the world. Like all of that, if you listen to what he's saying, he's agreeing that he does dumb things and he makes dumb tweets sometimes. So when you see something that makes the stock drop and all of the news takes away from great Q1 results that end up being profitable, and there's a lot of gold nuggets in there, you're not talking about it. You're just talking about his all caps tweets and like social unrest. And it also eliminates the good tweets that he's sending about how to handle the pandemic, because you have to focus on these loud ones. And I don't blame the media for that. And I'm the first one to be upset with the media who take him out of context and spin things. But when you're yelling in all caps and the stock drops 10%, what do you want him to report?
Right.
You're going to report that he is the CEO of a company and expressing himself very poorly, and the stock is dropping. And that doesn't give a lot of confidence. So I think it's okay to say that. And I think it's okay to put pieces together and think, well, okay, he's tweeting a little odd right now. I wonder if he's having a hard time, just like he has said before. Right. His factories are closed. He's worried about Q2. This may be the time when he's maybe going to write things without thinking, as he's done. And I think saying that is just non-controversial. And the fact that people push back with these wild, in-depth 4D chess stories about what he meant by these 3-word all caps tweets is astounding to me. I don't know what you're reading to be able to put that together. I think he's just mad, and that's okay.
Right.
Because he's a human being, and you know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, like most of us, like we would all agree that if we wanted to open something up, we would want to do it, like we were talking about, in a rational way. Employees come in, they get assessed at the door, get screened, temperatures, and he probably wants to implement that, but it doesn't come out in his all caps like, let's open everything up, freedom or whatever. He wants the factory going. That doesn't mean he wants to just let everybody start going right into work as it was before. I think he wants measures in place to keep workers safe.
And he has experience. He could be talking about how the heck they were able to make it through China and open a factory and have production during a pandemic. They've already done this. So that's what he should be talking about, and selling. Right, like, you've already done this. So talk about, like, we want to do what we did. We're experienced. We're the most experienced in doing this. And we're going to, and we didn't have the pandemic break out in Shanghai. So why we want to do the same thing over here? Here's how we would do this. Here's why I think we can open up again, right? He has this information, but instead he sounds just like the people who are showing up with like guns at the government office with no masks on yelling. He's the same as those people. They're not talking about slowly opening things. They're not talking about science. They're not talking about how to open a factory or and like it or not, whether you agree with those people or not, that's the pool of people that the news and society is going to put him in with. And maybe that's what he wants. I don't know. But I think he's far more educated than that, and he doesn't really advocate specifically for that. But he leaves a lot of room to the imagination with these, tweets.
The thing is, it's like frontline workers like Ashley, she's the first one to see this in large numbers concentrated coming into the ER once things get opened up and we have a lot more cases, just then the curves go right back up again. And a lot more people going to the ER. Mm-hmm. And we'll start seeing even more deaths, and people don't see that. And we need to think about that.
Yeah, and what works, Wade, right? Preventative medicine and getting people in before it's too late. And what are they doing now because of the pandemic and access and fear, which is the right thing, but they're waiting to come in, like you're saying, into the ER. Now they're pretty sick, and now they need a lot of resources, and whatever problem they had is probably worse. I think about my wife having her aneurysm in 2018. If it was during the pandemic, she probably would have died because it was pretty close anyway, and she immediately got over to the hospital. If the hospital was either full or we had to wait or she was too scared, she wasn't sure about going in that day because you don't really know. If she had waited a little bit, she would have been part of the 50% that die before they get to the hospital easily. There are people like that right now who are not getting the right treatment for their health conditions. Maybe their medicines are lapsing. Or by the time that, I'm going to crawl to the ER, I'm finally ready. And the docs look at him and they can't do as much if he would have come in sooner, which is expected. But this is like the fallout of the pandemic and not having enough people ready to go to be able to handle these things. Second and third order effects that we don't really talk about. That, there are probably people dying right now that did not have coronavirus that will not be included with it, but it's very much related to that. And you need to kind of think about that too. But I could go on and on about this. I think it's a great topic, but
sick. Yeah. So people are waiting and waiting. So when they go in, they're more sick than they would be.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. Just like I said, in my small little sample size, people are waiting, they've had crushing chest pain for a week versus crushing chest pain for an hour, right? And in the case of a heart attack, we all know time is muscle. So the longer you go with those symptoms and that damage being done, you can't undo that. So, and people are like, well, I have had people literally say, well, I didn't want to come in because I'm scared. And I was like, yeah, I understand that, and that is where I wish we could do more education. Like, no, you need to come. If you're having a life-threatening problem, you think you're having a life-threatening problem, you can't breathe, you're having chest pain, you're having neurological symptoms, et cetera, you need to come in to the hospital. It's okay. We'll still take care of you.
Yeah, I had really thought about that. That's a good piece.
Okay. Well, we probably need to get back to assembling masks and get these done, but I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to have part 2 of this. If you have some time tomorrow, we're going to do our Q&A of the Twitter questions.
Awesome.
We'll go through that. So maybe about the same time tomorrow?
Yeah, it works for me.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So thanks, Earl.
Bye, Earl.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Ashley.
Yeah,
Stay safe over there.
Bye.
So I'll see you on
Nice
Twitter.
seeing you, Wade.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Take care.
Thousands of people know and love Earl for his humor and insight, as well as his ability to shake things off. Unfortunately, sometimes words and emotions get out of hand on Twitter. Please, for Earl and for all of us, think before you tweet. It's up to all of us to maintain the respect and optimism that Tesla is known for. Thank you for watching this video.